This is call to order. If you don't mind standing and are able to stand, would you please rise on pledge of allegiance, after which I will give the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm asking you to remain standing just for a second. Dear God, we come into your presence, Lord, and we will acknowledge your omnipotence and your omniscience. We thank you, Lord, for our lives and our families and our jobs and the community in which we live and our state and this nation. We give you praise for things being as well as they are. We ask that your spirit will reign and abide with us in this meeting, and that you will be honored, praised, and glorified by our actions, deeds, and decisions. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. The rules that govern this gathering are located on the trophy case at the back of the room. There's an audience participation form located there. If you wish to address the board, please fill out a form and you will kindly give it to the clerk. At this specific time, you will be able to make your comment for any item on the agenda or for any item not on the agenda. By way of awards and presentations tonight, the first presentation we have is a presentation of the most recent actuarial valuations, and we have representatives here from Coweta McDonald to make this presentation. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Todd Green. I'm with Coweta McDonald Consulting. My colleague, Elisa Bennett, is also going to be presenting tonight. I'm going to be specifically detailing the results of the pension valuation, and Elisa will be working or present the materials for the OPEB plan, or the healthcare plan. And I know you have a long meeting ahead of you, so I'm going to be as quick as possible. So if you have any questions, please stop me. So just as an overview of what we do as the actuary is we think that this equation, we call this a basic retirement funding equation, kind of sums up what we're doing. The idea is that while an employee is working for the city, there's going to be money set aside, and that money is going to accumulate with investment income and eventually pay out the benefits when they retire. Since this is a defined benefit plan, we don't know exactly what the benefits are going to be because they're based on someone's service and pay when they retire. So what we do as the actuary is we estimate the benefit payments that are going to get paid out using a set of assumptions, and then from that we determine a contribution, and from that contribution that will earn interest and help and pay for the benefit. One thing to point out is this is not a Social Security type plan. There's money being set aside that's accumulating, so approximately 60% of what gets paid out in benefits actually comes from investment income and not contributions. So it's a very efficient way to provide benefits for your employees. The last thing to mention is that this is a closed pension plan, so there's no new active members coming into it, so eventually the number of actives will go down to 0. And once the last retiree who's receiving a benefit passes away, the plan will be closed. Some comments on the valuation. So this valuation date is July 1, 2017. There's a typo here. This sets the contribution for the fiscal year 18-19, and this is a change from what was previously done, and the reason is because for budgeting purpose, it's easier for you to get your contribution, know what your contribution is today for the next fiscal year, so you can already get into the budgeting process and know what you have to fund. This is a process that's followed by all the state systems in Georgia and every system that we work with across the country. The unfunded actuarial accrued liability increased from $26.1 million to $31.8 million. The asset return for the year was 9.66% versus the assumed 6.5% per year, so that was just over 3% gain on a market value side. On the actuarial value of assets, actuaries don't like to make things simple, so we used a smooth market value, which basically smooths in gains or losses over a 5-year period. So on an actuarial value basis, the return was just under the assumed rate, so it's 5.46%. The good news is that extra 3.16% of return will help offset some losses, in the future potentially. Individually, pay increase-wise, on an individual basis, the average increase in pay this year was 3.9% compared to what we anticipate by the assumption, which is 2.5%. This is mainly, this increase in pay is mainly attributable to a one-time increase due to a pay study that was done in the county. So. The next item is changes since the valuation. So whenever this is our first time presenting to you, so what we call, actuaries call a transition when you go from one actuary to another. During that process, we basically try to recreate the liabilities based on the data and the assumptions that the previous actuary used. So during that process, we discovered an error that the actuary had been doing, or had incorporated into their numbers, and we corrected that error, and it increased the unfunded liability by $4.2 million. So I said back on that the C plus I equals B plus E equation, we help you determine, anticipate or project out what the benefit payments are going to be. So in order to do that, we start off with the census data from each member in the plan on the valuation date. So as of 2017, the active membership was 271, retirees were 117, and deferred vesteds were 12 members. So this active member, since this is a closed plan, that eventually will get to 0 out in the future. The average salary and benefits, so average pay was $54,680, and the average benefit being paid is $26,136. The total payroll for the plan is $14.8 million, and the total payroll and benefits being paid out is $3.1 million per year, or this year. This next slide shows the average age of service of the plan. So the average age is 49 with average service of 17. So as this plan gets closer and closer to final maturity, that number is going to keep creeping up. Average service should go up by a year, and the age should get closer to retirement age. And the average age for retirees and beneficiaries in receipt is 70. So roughly life expectancy is around 84. So basically you're paying benefits on average till somebody's 84 years old. This slide, we show you the assets of the plan on an actuarial value and a market value basis. So on an actuarial value basis, we're at $59 million, and on market value, we're at $58.4 million. The market return, below that, we show the return on investments on a market basis and an actuarial basis. So you can see on the prior year market compared to the 6.5 assumption, that's why we have losses, or that's why on an actuarial basis the return was less than 6.5%. The good news is this year we're at 9.66%, so that's going to help go the other way. And if anybody has questions, please stop me. I'm just trying to, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So the results of the valuation, so as of July 1, 2017, the total contribution, including employee and employer amounts, was $4.3 million. So just to point out that this plan had no unfunded liability, it was 100% funded, it would only cost $980,000. So most of the contribution that's being contributed to the plan right now is used to pay down the unfunded liability. We expect the employees who contribute 2.75% of their pay to put in roughly $400,000. So what's left for the county is $3.9 million. So this will be payable in the 18-19 fiscal year.
Quick question on the funded ratio. Is that 65% number that the market likes to get?
No, that's a measurement of the plan's assets to the accrued liability.
Okay. So true it up. I mean, is there a recommendation that's out there as far as networks? Is it lower or higher? Or?
Well, each plan is different, so it depends on funding policy, the value of the benefits, but I would say that you're kind of right in the middle right now, and just, that middle since 2008 took a big hit, so everybody's been recovering from that, and your period to pay off the amortization, your period to pay that off is 15 years, but it stays at 15 years, so that 65 is probably, unless, is likely to stay there unless the assets perform, really, outperform 6.5% consistently over a long period of time. This next slide shows the plan's accrued liability and the funded ratio. So the accrued liability is equal to the actuarial value of assets plus the unfunded liability. So it's roughly $90 million. And the funded ratio is 65%. The next slide shows, we make a series of assumptions as actuaries. My mom always said, when you assume, what happens when you assume. But really, from our perspective, the biggest change from the prior actuary was just correcting that error that we uncovered. So everything else is pretty much in line. Just to go back to that funded ratio, the one thing I would point out is you guys actually have a very low assumed rate of return compared to other plans. So compared to a plan that has a higher assumed rate of return, but then might have a better funded ratio, you actually might be better off in the long term. Because we were here for the presentation earlier about how the money's managed, and you're actually trying to get the 6.5%, so you're not inviting that volatility of going after, the 7.5 or the 8s, essentially. So again, each plan is its own unique thing, and there's no rule of thumb of what is good or bad. And then finally, we show the projected benefit payments for the system. So they start off at under $4 million, and they peak at just around $10 million, and eventually we'll go to zero once the light blue color on the bottom are current retirees, and the dark blue on top are people who are active who will eventually retire. So that's why you set aside money, and that's why you have it invested to help pay that. And with that, finishes my comments on the pension, unless there's any specific questions. I drank a lot of coffee on the break, so.
Well, we reserve the right to, we call you Todd if a question arises.
Okay.
Hi there, I'm Elisa Bennett with Coweta McDonald, and I'm going to go over retiree health evaluation. How do you, oh, there we go. Okay, we're going to talk about the retiree health evaluation. So first, I just wanted to go over the eligibility for the benefits. The benefits are slightly different. There are people in the plan that are not in the pension plan because they're in the defined contribution plan. So anyone from either of those plans who retires with age 65 and 10 years of service, or their age plus service equals 85 with at least 25 years of credited service, or 35 years of service, is eligible to receive this benefit. Now, given that, the plan has been closed to employees hired on or after January 1st, 2015. So anyone who's hired before that date and meets those eligibility criteria will get a benefit. And the benefit is based on your years of service at retirement and your age, whether or not you're eligible for Medicare. So it depends on how much service you have and, of course, your age, how much subsidization you get from the county, and that's shown in that chart there. The county also pays 50% of coverage for dental until the participant is Medicare eligible, and there's also a $5,000 life insurance policy. So these are all benefits other than pension benefits, which is why we call it OPEB. All right, the data we use to calculate these liabilities are we start with the current claims cost, which is based on the monthly premium rates as of January 1st, 2017, at the time we were doing the evaluation. That's our latest data. We use census data that's different from the pension plan, of course, because it includes those defined contribution participants as well. And it also has some extra data elements, like which plan they chose for their health coverage and whether or not they're covering a spouse. So we make assumptions into the future. So anyone currently retired, we assume they'll continue with their same type of coverage. Future retirees, if they're under age 65, we assume 96% pick the Open Access Plus plan and 4% take the HSA plan until they are Medicare eligible, at which point everybody is in the Medicare Advantage plan. We also come up with a participation rate because when you have retiree health care, there are always people who may decline coverage, especially those who have to pay and they don't get full coverage, they have to pay a premium. So we assume that 95% who are eligible will take the coverage, and if their spouse is eligible to be covered, we assume 80% of males cover their spouse and 65% of females. And then for this plan, we use a discount rate of 4%. We also have to make assumptions about what's going to happen with your health coverage in the future. And our assumption essentially is that the cost will increase. So currently, costs are running about 7.5% per year for pre-Medicare and about 5.5% for Medicare eligible. And then as we go out into the future, we assume that starts to sort of step down to an ultimate rate of 5% across the board. And in dental claims, we assume about a 4% increase. All right, so your funding results summary, so you can look at 2015 and then 2017. So 2017 is the first valuation that we have done. The prior actuary did the 2015. So the total active and retiree headcounts have dropped, and that's because the plan is closed. So anyone who was hired after January 1, 2015 is not in the plan, so no new actives are coming in. So the headcounts dropped from 833 to 706. The accrued liability went up from about 63 million to 74 million. You have no assets, so this is all unfunded liability. We calculate what's called an annual required contribution. Now that is an old GASB disclosure item. This year, 2018, is the first year of the new GASB disclosures, so we'll talk about that briefly at the end. But the old GASB disclosures required a calculation of the contribution amount that would need to be put in to pre-fund the plan, kind of similar to how the pension plan does it. So we did calculate that, and we calculated it as a percentage of pay. So that went up from 14% to 21%, but again, this is an unfunded plan, so it's not really used for anything. We do a gain and loss analysis because we look at last year's liability, and we look at where we expected the liability to go and where it actually went. Now, with a retiree health plan, there's a lot more variability than a pension plan because, of course, health claims costs change a lot, and people can take or drop coverage and cover a spouse or not cover a spouse. So we start with the unfunded from 2016, even though we didn't show that before, the prior actuary did do an estimate of what it would have been at 2016, which was $67.6 million. We add in what's called the normal cost, and that means that every year an active employee works, they earn one more year's worth of benefit. They get that much closer to getting their benefit, so there's a cost there. So that's $2.7 million. Contributions are made by the employer because it's a pay-as-you-go plan, so even though it's not pre-funded, you're still paying the benefits as they accrue. So we would have expected the unfunded to be $72 million. We actually got $74 million. So that's an experience loss of about $2 million. That amounts to about 3% of liability. And again, for a retiree health plan, that is definitely within what we would expect because there's a lot of volatility there. If it starts to get bigger than that, then you might start to think that you need to change some assumptions, but that is fine. So finally, I just want to end on the new GASB disclosures. There is some information through here that I won't get into great detail. The biggest thing that's going to change is this disclosure item will show up on your balance sheet, and also you will have to use the municipal bond rate. So before I said we're using a discount rate of 4, you will have to use the exact bond rate as of the measurement date, which I think for the most recent measurement date is like 3.56%. We don't really know what it's going to be until it's time to measure it. So there's a few other things that happen. I'll just kind of quickly go through them. You have to show your net OPEB liability on your balance sheet again, and we carry things through like a OPEB expense and earned inflows and outflows similar to what you would do with a pension plan.
This year's millage rate, and then we'll ask for
Well, I have the
comments,
OPEB plan too, unless you
support
have
of
questions.
or in opposition to the proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, staff, and those in the public here tonight. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, state law does require that this body, the local taxing jurisdiction, adopt a millage rate prior to the end of August for consideration. So if you are considering the adoption of a millage rate higher than the calculated rollback rate, we are required by law to have 3 public hearings. As you stated, this is the first of those 3. And at the end of the presentation, I'll remind everyone about the following 2 public hearings. First of all, I'd like to just go through a summary of the timeline for the millage rate and budget adoption. It is about a 5-month process that begins in May. We begin collecting capital, operating, and personnel requests from department heads and elected officials. The budget team begins to meet in June and assemble that data and set up individual meetings to go line by line in each function and each department. In July, we begin further looking at projected revenue from non-property tax sources, as well as look at ongoing capital projects to determine roll forward from the previous fiscal year. We also meet with administration and HR to discuss personnel requests and any potential reorganizations that may need to take place. As well, in July, we also look at the tax digest totals from the tax commissioner and begin proposing a millage rate. That brings us to August, where we are today, where we look at the proposed millage rates, which were advertised, and of course the public hearings. Once the board adopts the millage rate at the end of this month, we will then bring this body a proposed budget for consideration and then final adoption at the end of September. As required by law, if this body does consider a tentative millage rate that is higher than the rollback, we are required legally to place several ads. This is one of those ads. The state actually regulates the exact language of this ad, and I'll go ahead and read that. And that is that the Board of Commissioners have tentatively adopted a millage rate which will require an increase in property taxes by 2.5% in the incorporated area of the county and 2.7% in the unincorporated area of the county over the rollback millage rate. This tentative increase will result in a millage rate of 7.63 mils in incorporated, which is a little higher than the previous year in terms of the rollback. Without it, it would be no more than 7.442 mils. And then it goes on further to talk about the tax increase, which I'll get to later in the presentation. And then again, in terms of unincorporated, it would result in a millage rate of 6.64 mils in unincorporated, which is a slight increase. And then based on the rollback rate would be no more than 6.464 mils. And again, I'll get into the calculation of that a little later. That is required by law. The ads have been placed. So just a quick review of what a mill is. So generally, a mill represents the tax liability of $1 per $1,000 of assessed value. So an example here is that a house, or let me back up, in Georgia, personal property and real property is valued at 40% of fair market value.
Assessed at 40%?
Yes, sir, assessed, thank you. So in this example, a house that's valued at $200,000 is assessed at $80,000. And if the millage rate were 10 mils, then it would be a tax liability of $800. And again, it's a simple example just to go through the process. And there'll be a further example later in the presentation. This chart just shows a brief history of the millage rate from 2012 to 2018. It breaks it out by incorporated and unincorporated, as well as a total at the bottom. The red box there highlights the millage rates specifically. If you look at 2012, incorporated rate was 7.79 mils, all the way down to the proposed for 2018 at 7.63, and respectively on unincorporated at 6.66 down to 6.64. And at the bottom there you can see the total taxes levied both for incorporated and unincorporated as a total, and then the actual net taxes as a percentage of change during those years. So again, just a snapshot of the last 7 years, kind of the activity, both in the digest, the taxes levied, and the millage rates.
So the taxes collected in 2012 were 26 million, and the taxes collected projected for 2018 is 34 million?
That's correct. That would be what's levied, and that is based on 100% collections, which historically we have a fairly good track record of about 98% collections. So again, that would be based on 100% collections.
And the difference between the 2012 and 2018 is that the population of the county increased to that degree?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So in terms of going into the proposed FY 2019 budget, a few expectations for the year. One is continue operations and existing service delivery. Next is to fund necessary capital expenditures and debt service from actual fiscal year revenue. Fund performance-based salary adjustments. Review personnel requests. And I will note there were 57 positions requested this year, and I'll get to more detail later. And then maintain a fund balance of 15 to 20%, which is 3 to 4 months of operations. I will note that this year currently I believe we're at 13.1 million. So we're roughly 15% fund balance, 15 to 16%. So then to get to the actual millage rate calculation, we take a few steps. One is we look at the budget request, and we go through the non-property tax revenue projections to then derive what will be required from property taxes to balance the budget. So the first step is to look at the general fund expenditures by function as proposed. I'll pause here and go through some detail. Please stop me if you have any questions. First of all, you can see on the first column under description, this summary is functionalized, and so there are a lot of details here in terms of departments, and I'll try to highlight some. Commissioner's Office, Administration, Tax Assessors, Tax Commissioner, IT, GIS, Tax Assessors, Tax Commissioners. So all the other functions of general government are here. Judicial, all the court systems and accountability courts, public safety, as you would imagine, all the public safety. This also includes animal control and adult probation, which are two that typically are not thought of. Public works, road department, transportation, recreation and library, public health and welfare, housing and development is primarily community development. Capital is obviously one-time capital expenditures. The debt service you see there is directly related to a public works and a fleet maintenance shop that was approved in 2018. And then finally the personnel request. So if you look at the FY 2018 column, you can see the approved budget. The next column is the proposed budget for those functions, as well as the variance between those two fiscal years in money and in percentage.
Okay, so obviously each year it requires more money to operate, as is outlined in 2018 column government. In 2019 is basically a $150,000 increase, and so is that attributed to the rate of inflation?
Primarily in all these functions, you'll see in just a second, we are about 64% personnel in the balance of that operating cost in our entire budget. So when we're being service oriented, we do have costs for employees, health insurance, obviously looking at salaries. So that would be the primary variance in most of these, and I'll actually call out a few more. But I would say in general, most of the increase in any of these functions are for those costs for personnel.
Thank you.
Speaking specifically to a few of those, in the judicial category, there's a variance of $319,000. There were 2 positions added in that area, one for the DA's office, one for the public defender. Also, under public safety, there are a myriad of things. Some of that is projected salary increases based on performance evaluation. This year next year we are going to have to make an appropriation to the 911 fund for the first time in the history of Coweta County, just over $200,000. There's a $132,000 increase for animal services regarding a new officer and additional costs for caring for the animals. $108,000 additional cost for food at the CI, an additional $123,000 appropriation for the ambulance service, And there's a lot of things outside of our control in terms of cost. We have uniform cost and public safety that can continue to go up, gas prices. Later tonight, you'll entertain an agreement for SROs, for additional SROs in the school system. It's about an additional $300,000 cost the first year for operation, and overtime cost. So all those things combined represent in the public safety area the $2.1 million. Those are items specifically
And
regarding.
the SRO that's a safety resource officer.
School resource
School
officer.
resource officer. That's a police station at each school in the county.
That's correct. The other items to note here, again, some of these items I'll skip over unless you have questions. I will mention public health and welfare. This body did approve funding for a part-time nurse practitioner at the Board of Health, which represents some variance there. The housing and development, that's part of a reorganization. It brought some staff from another department to community development. Capital, again, one-time purchases and the debt service. So that rounds out those items. Again, the total variance between the 2 years, $4.2 million. Any questions on that? Again, looking at the same chart by function is a breakout of personnel and operating costs. Again, you can see that almost all the functions are personnel driven versus operating. The one exception there you note is the recreation library. The operating cost exceeds personnel, and that's largely because there's about a 1.9 million appropriation to the library for that operation. Any questions on that?
Well, just as by way of comment, it seems to be there's an awful lot of arithmetic gymnastics taking place to keep this county up and running and keep everybody paid and keep the bills paid and keep the lights on. It just seems to be an awful lot considering how low the millage rate is.
We'll point out also in the operating for the general government, about $2 million of that is insurance costs for the county. Just about $1 million of it's general liability costs for facilities, as well as post-65 retiree health insurance. So again, of that $5 million, some of that is soft costs there. Again, looking at the same information, just in a pie chart, broke it down by function, you can see majority of that is public safety, followed by general government, judicial, public works, and so on.
So public safety includes the fire department, the sheriff's department, and EMS?
All those functions that you mentioned except the fire. Fire fund is separate, which we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation, but everything else is included here, including EMS service.
Thanks for that.
Yes, sir. Again, another view of that, general fund budget, basically looking at personnel versus operating and capital. So that's kind of the breakdown. Looking more specifically at appropriations to different funds or authorities, again, I won't go through all the details here unless you have any questions. I will point out, if you look at those, the biggest variance there, the one for solid waste, that does include capital expenditure. There is a large capital expenditure proposed to replace equipment at the landfill. It's a 10 or 15 year type item, so that's why that is supported as proposed. Next, we'll take and project non-property tax revenue. Again, if you look on the far left, you have a description of the revenue source, followed by fiscal year 2018, and then a projected fiscal year 2019, and a variance between those 2 years. Again, looking through those, you see the biggest variance is sales tax. Obviously, sales tax has been strong locally, and we expect that to continue. I will point out we have some movement with the legislature regarding the TABT that'll impact us a little bit. We believe that'll be a positive move. However, they will stop the ad valorem true-up, which impacts the fire fund slightly, which you'll see in a little bit. But overall, we do see as an increase for the next year, and we'll continue to monitor that. But again, looking at it in total, we're projecting approximately $2 million in additional non-property tax revenue for next year.
So why do you think that the sales tax is the biggest revenue generator of the whole list?
Aside from property tax, obviously that's the biggest source of revenue outside of this. I think just, again, the strong economy. Based on data that we've seen previously, The city of Noonan and the county has a large shopping or commercial district. I believe it brings in people from all over, from the region. That impacts the sales tax number.
Okay. So someone else is helping us with our sales tax collection?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I would also note that this sales and use tax also includes insurance premium, which I'll get to a little bit later. We're seeing an increase in that as well as a result of population. So that also contributes to that 1.7 million. Any other questions on the proposed revenue? So next we'll take and review the tax digest data. Each year the Board of Assessors is required to review the assessed value of taxable property in the county. When the trend of prices on real properties that have been recently sold in the county indicate there's been an increase in the fair market value, the Board of Assessors is required by law to redetermine the value of such property and adjust the assessment. That process is reassessment. We do get the tax digest from the tax commissioner. And again, this chart shows a breakout of the incorporated, unincorporated, and a total, as well as the 2017 digest and the quantity of reassessment of real property, quantity of real growth, and then the total 2018 digest and the percentage of change. So if I could just walk you through one of those examples. In the incorporated area, you see the 2017 digest. It was approximately $40.8 billion of reassessment and $83 billion of real growth. The difference being real growth is new, completely new growth to the community, and that is allowed to be captured without considering to be a property increase. So again, if you look at the total going horizontally, in 2018 you can see what those totals are. So a blended rate is approximately 5.96% growth between the incorporated and the unincorporated rate. And then further, to look at that in detail, about roughly 39% of the growth was for reassessments and approximately 61% of new growth. And again, keep in mind, this is as of January 1 each year, so anything after January 1 rolls to the next calendar year. Any questions on the digest itself? So one of the questions we get often this time of year is the difference between the two millage rates. So I'll go through the state law on this and answer any questions you have. This is, the difference being is because of the insurance premium rollback. So per state law, county and municipal corporations are authorized to impose a tax on life insurance companies, which is levied at 1% of gross direct life insurance premiums and 2.5% of gross direct premiums of other insurance other than life. Taxes are collected by the state and they're distributed to counties based on the ratio of municipal population as a total of the state's population. So insurance premiums are paid by unincorporated residents and they're distributed to the county, and the insurance premium taxes paid by incorporated residents are distributed to the city. Therefore, every citizen in the state gets a pro rata share or discount through either their county or the municipality where they live. Because residents of cities receive the benefit of any insurance premium taxes paid through their city or municipality, county millage rates required by law to be rolled back by the amount of the insurance premium taxes paid by unincorporated residents. Prior to this rollback rate, the cost of services provided primarily to unincorporated residents must be used to reduce the amount of insurance premium taxes used in the calculation. For Coweta County specifically, we reduced the insurance premium tax by the cost of code enforcement services, community development, stormwater services, and solid waste appropriation. Based on that, we did receive approximately $5.18 million in 2018. Therefore, the rollback for 2018 is 0.99 mils, so just under 1 mil, which represents the difference between the two proposed millage rates. Again, a lot of people say, what's unincorporated and incorporated? Again, just a graph of the county to show those municipalities in the county. So finally, we take a proposed budget, subtract the non-property tax revenue, again to determine what is necessary to cover the proposed budget. In this year's case, the proposed budget, almost $77.8 million. Non-property tax revenue, 44.8. What's required, property taxes, almost $33 million. And again, you can see the percentages there. Any questions there?
Can I ask, if you may have to ask, Hans may know the answer to this question, or Caleb may know the answer to this question, but What is the millage rate for the counties adjacent to Coweta? What is, you know what, Karen?
Not offhand, I can
Okay.
certainly find out. The Department of Revenue actually establishes that every year, so we can get that information.
I'm just thinking of counties of similar size, how we are positioned.
Actually, in years past, we have looked at that data. The problem is, it's kind of hard to compare apples to apples unless you spend a lot of time getting into each. For example, our ambulance service is wrapped up as part of the general fund. There are some counties that have a specific levy for literally every service they offer. So you have to really get into the details to really try to compare apples to
It just
apples.
looks like there's a whole sea of numbers that the state imposes upon the county. So you two have to, and then you have say it again? Yeah, and you have a erstwhile staff to navigate. I guess you're the navigator, and he's the captain. I guess we would be the passenger. It's a lot. That's a lot to absorb and regurgitate. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. So again, that was for the general M&O rate. Again, we take the same steps and we'll move a little quicker on the fire district. But again, we use the same methodology to establish the millage rate. Again, we're looking at proposed fire fund expenditures. You see the description, personnel operating. We are proposing to fund a match for 6 positions that can be partially grant funded, 75% for 2 years. And then capital reserves. Again, you look at FY 2018 total, proposed 19 and the variance. Again, if you look at that, the primary differences are the grant positions that we're proposing, the capital reserves. I will note that it is the intention in working with fire department leadership to look at either relocation or rebuilding an existing station or to move forward on a large apparatus replacement that's due. So that's what that funding would be used for, but we are still in conversation about the priority of that. So that's why it's listed that way. Any questions on the fire fund budget? Again, looking at the non-property tax revenue, I won't go through all the details here, but as you can see, it's a slight decrease in the revenue projected for 19. And again, that's because the ad valorem true-up is not part of the year going forward. Just a reminder that the highway ad valorem tax is a one-time tax instead of the ad valorem, and they're slowly moving away from that, so it represents. Again, looking the same way, take the budget, subtract the non-property tax revenue for a total, and the allocation of non-property tax revenue versus property taxes. So, let's take a look at the impact for a property owner. This example here is for a $200,000 property with homestead and incorporated. As you can see, the 2017 rate at 6.63, the 2018 rollback at 7.442, and the proposed rate at 7.63. If you look down at the bottom of the calculation, the 17 rate for that taxpayer would be approximately $534.10. The cost for the rollback rate would be $520.94, and the proposed rate for 2018 would be the same as 17, $534.10. You can see the difference of that. So $13.16 above the rollback rate in this equation. Taking the same information and looking at a $200,000 home in unincorporated area with homestead, you can see the calculation is the same. 6.63 mils, the rollback rate, and then the proposed rate. And again, the impact to the taxpayer, $646.80. Excuse me, yes. And approximately $12.32 more than the rollback rate. I will state that these values are established each year through the tax assessor's office. They run values to determine what the average price is for a homestead property and a non-homestead. So these values, we're not making these up. This is something data we get from the tax assessor's office.
So can you go back to the 2 slides okay. So for $520, an individual homeowner is getting police protection, fire protection.
In this particular case, this is an incorporated, so let me give you the unincorporated. So this is a property taxpayer outside in unincorporated county. Under the proposed rate, it would be $264.80 under the 2018 proposed rate. And all those services that we've mentioned would be included.
Included in that?
There is a separate levy for fire district, which you'll see in just a second. But yes, sir.
Okay, so every time I call the police, they need to come, and that's what it costs. That's what that costs me.
And again, I stated earlier, but now we're beginning to subsidize the 911 fund, so even the 911 call begins to be shared as part of this.
And that tax that's paid helps to keep the roads, bridges, and all that. The upkeep is included in that.
Currently, all the personnel for Public Works is included in this budget. The only thing that's not is actual asphalt dollars and capital projects. And that's funded from SPLOST.
Okay.
Years ago, back in 2009, the board had about $6 million of operating in the budget for road maintenance, shoulder maintenance, and due to cuts necessary and growth, those dollars were moved to SPLOST.
Okay.
To balance the budget.
All right, thanks for that.
Yes, sir. So again, one of the other questions we often get is someone gets their tax bill and they look at it at the top and it says Coweta County Tax Commissioner, and they look at the total. A lot of times people don't realize there's separate levies for a lot of different entities in the county. So this graph again shows the example of that $200,000 taxpayer.
Is that not correct, Michael? So the tax, right now there's a senior exemption, the way I understand it, from my limited knowledge, but there's an exemption on the school board side of tax, the heaviest tax part of it. So as you get older, you pay less school board tax. And you're suggesting you want more of to pay less school board tax as a senior citizen.
Well, I want to also pay less property taxes.
Okay, right now, the way I understand it, the property tax there's no senior exemption for property tax, is there?
The exemptions are on the website, more
Okay.
specifically because it depends on age and a number of categories. So I hate to be broadly say no.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Commissioner, so this body would have to consider the legislation to support it, to go forward to the General Assembly. So in past discussions, it was offered that we would get a recommendation from the school board to make that, and you guys not initiate that request on their behalf.
So it would have to come from the initiation of the school board to come to this board to put it in front of the local board to go to the local legislation and get voted on by the General Assembly. That's correct.
And I do know, and I can't speak for the school board, even though I know there's one board member here tonight, but I know there are individuals that have gone and lobbied to the school board about that. So again, that would come from them to us, if that was the case.
So there is no consideration then to have a senior exemption for property tax. Is that correct?
What I understand is the administrator said there are some exemptions already on the books, but it depends on your age and other factors.
Right.
So you have to qualify for it.
Right, which I do, and I was asking the board in the last meeting to increase that.
Okay. And
then there was going to be a referendum and something.
And your concern is noted.
I'm sorry?
Your concern is noted. Your question is heard. We hear you.
Okay. Well, since nothing's been done, since I've been at this meeting, it seems that you may be hearing me, but you're not doing anything about it. So as a result, as a Coweta County citizen, I am against this increase because we're not doing anything for our more for our senior citizens, even though we're increasing taxes continuously. Senior citizens are on a fixed income, and our largest expense obviously is medical. I've read about that in news, etc. But like I said, when I was here last time, it was supposed to be worked on, and nothing's been done. So I would like to say as a citizen, I am against this increase since we're not doing anything for our citizens, anything more for our senior citizens.
I hear you. You understood. We understand.
Okay, thank you.
And may I reiterate that this particular section, I'm just want to reiterate to the audience, I'm asking for comments in support of the millage rate. You will get an opportunity to oppose, but now we're asking for people who are supporting the proposed millage rate.
May I address you, Mr. Chairman?
I'm calling for people who I have a form for.
What kind of form?
Do you have a form in your hand?
I do.
Okay, would you give it to the clerk? And if anyone has a form and wish to speak, please bring it to the clerk. Okay, now would you give us your name and address?
My name is Alejandro Manglomba. I live at 25 Fair Oaks Court in Noonan, Georgia.
Okay, are you wanting to speak in favor of the millage rate?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
The reasons given is very simple. Mr. Chairman, I moved to this county. I put 4 children through the school system. They were well educated and well cared for. I received great benefits from the county. It is proper to give it back. Now, the seniors have exemptions, I accept that. The disabled have exemptions, I accept that. But those like me who are willing and able to work should contribute more. Nothing wrong with that in an organized society. In addition, this particular county is growing at good pace, progressing, but requires safety and security. We all demand it. I demand it for my children. How are we going to pay for more security, for more law enforcement, if you don't agree to chip in? How are we going to support new exits like a Poplar Road, new roads and bridges, if we are not going to put $10 more? I, personally, own property. I have one exemption. The others are full taxed. Still, I don't complain, because it's better to give fountain than to be a drain. I'm happy with the county. I pledge my support to the county. This is not administration that is tax and spend. They measure every dime. I'm very conservative, Mr. Chairman, but it's fair to give. When the county grows at steady pace with order, like we are doing it, I have no complaint to give. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and I appreciate your comment. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the proposed millage rate? Please come forward. If you'd like to speak in support.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a form, but could I say something?
If you don't mind.
And I'll fill out a form, but you can find it.
Well, all right. And for those someone may not be aware, would you just give us your name?
Mike Yeager.
Address.
I live at 1658 North Mill Road.
All right.
But I reside most of the time at 560 Grayson Trail.
Welcome.
No, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the staff and the hard work that they did putting this together. You know, from having a budget, knowing and seeing that, you know, public safety takes up a good portion of this. But I think it should be noted, and I just wanted to let people in the audience know this, at the last department head meeting, it was told that, you know, they were talking about the budget, the current budget that we're under, which will run out at the end of September. That, you know, each department was listed and shown that each department is currently well under budget for the current year. Is that not right, Mike? So I just want to know, you know, want it noted to the people that I think the departments, and I can speak for the sheriff's office, we're good stewards with the money that we've been given, because, you know, here we are less than 2 months, you know, till we begin a new budget cycle. And I know the sheriff's office was at approximately 69% of the spent budget. I know fire was somewhere around 77, 911 was like 71, so well within. I mean, because realistically speaking, you know, if you look at it at about an 8 to 9% growth every month, you should be somewhere in the 80s. But each one of the departments, you know, including the sheriff's office, is well under. So I think that shows that, you know, we work with what we've got. And I think that this, what the staff did in putting this together and putting together every year, you do a fantastic job. And I just want, people in the county to know that we are good stewards and we try to do what's right and we don't live above our means.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate you. Maybe someone else, we've had another gentleman before you agreed with you. Anyone else like to speak in support of this millage rate? All right, so now I have an audience participation form from David York, who, would you come forward? Now I'm calling for people who want to make comments in opposition to the millage rate. And would you give us your name and address, please?
Name's David York. I live at 35 Bedford Forest Drive.
Okay, and speak into the mic so that the people behind you can hear you well.
You need me to repeat it?
We have it, but just so that the people can hear you clearly, just stand a little closer to the mic.
Goes as close as I can get.
All right. All right.
I'm a resident of Coweta County, have been for 20 years. I moved in from out of state. The property taxes here are in alignment from where I moved from. I understand there was a millage rate increase 3 years ago or so, and has stayed in force. Is there any time when that is expected to expire? Is a question. My taxes have went up every year for the last 3 years. I'm retired, I'm on fixed income, so I don't have the capability of running out, unless I want to go to Walmart and reach it, to increase my income. I would like to point out that as I drive around the county, I see things that I question whether we are being good stewards of the money coming in. One of the things that I question is there's a community center building on Literary Lane. It's next over by the library, over by the new soccer fields, out by the church, the Catholic Church. That building's open 2 hours a week on a Monday afternoon, from 11 to 1. It also provides space for early voting. That is it. I have never seen that building open or other than early voting, and the sign on the door says from every Monday from 11 to 1. I don't know if that's good stewardship of the money spent to build that building or not. It seems strange to me. Another thing is roundabouts. There's a roundabout on Greasem Trail in the middle of the road next to the sheriff's or the jail or whatever that is down there. Now looks like there's going to be new construction off to the one side, but the other side is completely dead, and the new construction there's no buildings there's roads put in now, but I question whether we were smart in putting in a roundabout this early for a maybe anticipated construction that may or may not be fulfilled. Another one was when coming down Lower Fayetteville, which I do all the time. I come from Sharpsburg, so I come up Lower Fayetteville to avoid the traffic on Bullsboro. The road was closed here for basically a month, putting in, somebody told me it was a bike and walking trail. I don't know if that's what it is. That's great. I'm all good for exercise and things like that, but I really haven't seen much publicity on it, or even if it's completed. I know the road's opened up now, but I don't know if the actual trail has been completed. And the last one that I wrote down was the roundabout on Lower Fayetteville in front of the Nixon Center. That seems, wow, that's been there now. Why it ever went in, I don't know, outside of somebody went and put a brand new entrance into the Nixon Center, which I didn't see a need for. It already had an entrance exit about 100 yards up the road. So I'm questioning whether we're spending our tax money wisely. There are things that need to be done. I'm all for that. I was going to bring up Washington Street about 2 blocks east of us here. That I was going to bring up. That road is in terrible shape. It needs resurfaced. But driving by it today, coming in, I see something is happening over there. So I don't know if you are the board that controls road repairs, resurfaces, but
David, I don't want to cut you off. I'm going to give you an opportunity to wrap up your comments. So,
Well, what I'm getting at is I think you guys, there's good things going on, but we need to be watchers of our monies. Just because you have $100 in your pocket doesn't mean you have to spend $100. And anything you could do to keep my taxes down, and I am a senior, I'm with the young man that was just talking about it. I know I get the school board tax-free or reduction, whatever it is, but I'm like him, you know, whether it's a school board tax or a county tax or a property tax or a sales tax, it's all a tax. It's all money out of my pocket. And I appreciate your concern and efforts in putting forth and being good stewards of the money brought in.
and we thank you for making your comment.
Can I mention, several of those things you mentioned were done by the city. We have no control over them. Like the walking trail going under Lord Fayetteville, that's the city. The roundabout that was put in there was by the city.
So you guys have nothing to do with the city?
No, sir. No, sir.
So you do basically just the unincorporated
Yes, sir.
portion of
Yes,
Coweta
sir.
County?
Yes, sir.
So that I didn't know, so I learned something tonight. I tell you, all those facts and numbers and figures that was going up here on the board, my head is swimming. I'm at a loss, and I want to thank you, gentlemen.
It's understandable. All right, appreciate that. Is Patricia Fishburne here? Welcome. And would you please give your name and address for the record?
Patricia Fishburne at 278 South Alexander Creek Road. I've never spoke in front of these things today, but I would like to say, first of all, that I do appreciate you opening in prayer and having the pledge. That meant a lot to me. And there's peace in the room. And it was a great presentation. A lot of things I did not know that my eyes were open to tonight. And I appreciate all the services that the county gives us. I'm a senior, bet you can't tell. But my husband and I are in our 70s. We're both retired, and we're like everybody else on a fixed income, trying to make the, the dollars stretch. We retired on a shoestring budget. We married on love, and that's all we have is love. Been married 55 years. We raised 3 children, sent them to private Christian school. I've been in Coweta County for 18 years, and we love it here. We hope and pray we'll be able to stay here till the Lord calls us home. But, it's hard, and with the rising healthcare problems that we have now, and the medicines that we have now, gas prices rising, and groceries. I know you all feel that too, but I'm in my senior years, and we don't expect a free ride. We expect to pay our fair share, because I do appreciate the 911 and all the work that our policemen and women do in our counties and all. But please keep in mind the seniors, and as you're thinking about the millage rates, because it's, and I just heard today, I didn't even know about this meeting tonight, but I said I had to come and speak from the heart. But the county, they go up on the taxes too. That's 2 things there. We moved from over a 3,000 square foot house into a 1,500 square foot house, so that we could afford, we have the basics of everything, nothing elaborate, and we're happy. But if it keeps going up, I don't know what we'll do. My only one son has a basement apartment, and we don't want to retire down there. So thank you for hearing my request.
I appreciate you making it. Thank you. I have a form from Miss, I guess, I don't know if Miss Lorelei Scott. Am I saying that correct?
You are.
All right. Welcome, Miss Scott.
Thank you.
And just let the people know your name and address.
Okay. Lorelei Scott, 80 North Crest Drive in Newnan. Good evening, everyone. I just want to take a moment to address you, and I just want to say that I'm sure that you guys are aware with the reassessment, the countywide reassessment that has been going on for a while.
There are a lot of places right now that are incentivizing people to come in their community as opposed to putting a barrier to entry. An impact fee is a significant barrier to entry because the building that they might build in your community is probably similar in cost to what it would be in another close by community. But the impact fee is a line item they can say, oh, that I can avoid that cost by going somewhere else. Right now, you've got a situation where you've got significant new investment, and we're making the investment to try to make more of that happen. We're extending your sewer system to allow more companies to come in. We've got a market that would support that. So what I would ask is that as you're thinking about impact fees, think very deeply about what impact that would have on people selecting this location. The last time you had impact fees, it had a very strong chilling effect on new investment for anybody new coming in. And right now you've got a situation where you can help all these people that talked about, hey, we don't want an increase. New investment coming in that demands relatively little in the way of services is a very positive thing for the community. So that's what we're trying to do. And impact fees, I think, again, we've seen it in this county. We saw the chilling impact. We would very much like to continue to have the environment that we have right now because it's leading to new investment. Jobs, activity, businesses that are here will benefit from it. More electrical services that would be sold, more use of the water and sewer system, which pays fees to the county, businesses bringing coffee in, people cutting the grass. Everything that happens there is positive for the community. So I just encourage you to think about that as you're considering that source of revenue.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Calling for anyone who would like to make a public comment on any item on the agenda. I have Grant Ross. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'll be real brief.
Just give us your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, of course. Brant Frost, 27 Bellman Drive. And to just briefly, are we done talking about the property tax issue?
Well, it was on the agenda, and this is public comment. Any item on the agenda,
Okay,
and,
so-
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's fine.
So go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'll take 90 seconds. First off, I just want to thank you all for your service to our county. I know that no one gets rich working for the county. You have to deal with a lot of angry constituents sometimes, so I want to tell you I appreciate you. As we look back to 2015, if you'll recall, the county decided to do a rollback back then with a lot of public comment in support of that, and we appreciate that. Since then, you have not chosen to do that, and given the increase in growth in the population and our economy, I think it's time that we did that. The taxpayers have been the ones who have grown this economy for us. We all know that government doesn't create jobs, individuals, businesses create jobs and grow our economy. So I think it's time, particularly for our senior citizens. I personally would be perfectly content to pay a higher property tax if it meant we could give a tax cut to our senior citizens in property taxes. Just to point out a couple of statistics, you talk about inflation and economic growth. The population of our county, according to the Census Bureau, has gone up 10% in the last 6 years. Inflation has gone up 9.8%, and both those factors combined is less, if my figures are correct, than the growth in rates, the actual growth in revenue. So we're ahead of both inflation and population. According to smartasset.com, Carroll and Heard County have lower property tax rates than Coweta, and Troop, Meriwether, Spalding, and Fayette, along with Fulton, have higher rates. So it's a mixed bag. And just final one last comment. I believe you had 2 commenters in support of the property tax increase and 8 against, about 80-20. I think that's fairly representative of the county. Recently, 97, the Board of Commissioners, Board of Education, and the Sheriff's Office entered into an intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, for the joint submission of a grant to fund the School Resource Officer Program, or SRO. Following receipt of the grant, an SRO was assigned to East Coweta High School, and the local match for this position was split equally 50-50 between the county and the school system. In 1999, the parties entered into a subsequent agreement for the assignment of SROs at various middle and/or high schools located within the unincorporated areas of the county, again with compensation of SROs being split equally 50-50. In 2006, a revised agreement was once again executed by parties to include a few changes to the general terms, including the assignment of motor vehicles and replacement funding for those. And then in 2014, the parties executed a new agreement which expanded the SRO program to include elementary schools, and once again the compensation remained split equally. Earlier this year, the Board of Education did approve the placement of additional SROs throughout the county to ensure that each school is assigned an SRO for the safety and protection of the system and children. As a result of the additional SROs being requested, the staff has met with the sheriff and the school system, as well as the county attorney, to discuss revisions to the SRO program. Therefore, we have a proposed agreement that outlines the terms, services, responsibilities, and duties performed by SROs assigned to the various schools within the system. As proposed, for the first year, the school system shall reimburse the county for 50% of all personnel costs and 100% of vehicle purchases and necessary equipment as mutually agreed upon. The school system shall reimburse 100% of personnel overtime costs, including payroll taxes, for SROs who work more than the standard 86-hour work week or work period in their capacity as an SRO. For subsequent years, the school system shall reimburse the county for 65% of all personnel costs and continue providing 100% vehicle purchases and necessary equipment. They shall continue to pay 100% of personnel overtime costs. The term of the agreement shall be effective backdated to July 1st, 2018 and continue until June 30th of 2019 unless terminated otherwise as provided in the agreement. The agreement shall automatically renew for one-year terms on each July 1st unless it is terminated by any party. There is a 90-day termination period in the contract. Staff does recommend approval of this, and I know with the sheriff's here, if he and his staff have anything to add, I know they've been an instrumental part of this, and this agreement has been adopted by the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on number 16. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Request is approved. On additional action items tonight, I have a request approval to submit a letter associated with the tentative allocation of state funding for airfield marking at the Noonan Coweta County Airport.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the Georgia Department of Transportation has issued a tentative allocation of state funding.
Okay, we have the airport manager.
Yes, sir, and I was going to ask him to go ahead and go through the details of the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. The Coweta County Airport Authority has received a tentative letter of allocation from the Georgia Department of Transportation. It hopefully is a prelude to an actual grant of funds. This is for the airfield marking. Last time we had the markings refreshed, it's been about 8 years ago, and the weather has been unkind, and hot Georgia sun has taken its toll. Almost non-existent. It's actually an item that's been mentioned in our last 2 airfield inspections as something that needs to be addressed. So the state has issued this TA in the amount of $93,750 from the state. The local match would be $31,250. This would be including in the airport's FY19 budget, and which would begin in October 1. The bids would go out probably late September. We also asked that the board include a letter that would go to our GDOT representatives as well as Mr. Lynn Westmoreland, who serves this area on the GDOT board, and asking that $143,100.74 that were incurred with engineering on the East Side Taxiway be included in this grant for reimbursement to the county, since we outlaid the cash for the engineering, that it should be included and reimbursed in this project along with the airfield marking.
Okay.
I make a motion to be approved as requested.
Second. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Will you finish?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I'd like to add, Mr. Chairman, if I could. Number one, I appreciate what you do down there, you and the board. Secondly, I appreciate you bringing up this fact that we've already spent money for that engineering and studies and things that we do, and try to add that to this for reimbursements as well. Thank you.
All right. And I concur with you, Commissioner Nassar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next, I have a request to approve the execution of a real estate exchange agreement with the Coweta County Water and Sewage Authority.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, in 2004, the Board of Commissioners purchased an approximate 77.25 acre tract on Happy Valley Circle for the development of a future recreation facility. In lieu of developing this property, staff has worked with the Coweta County Water and Sewerage Authority regarding property exchange to expand an existing facility. As outlined in the proposed agreement, the county would deed the 77 acres on Happy Valley Road to the authority, and the authority would in turn deed a 67.37 acre tract on Old Corinth Road. There are maps that are attached to depict the property exchange as proposed. The county would receive property to expand the Brownsville Battlefield Park, while the Happy Valley property would provide an enhanced undeveloped buffer for the water supply area around BT Brown Reservoir. Staff is recommending that the board approve the agreement. I will say this would be contingent upon satisfying the legal ad requirements to make sure we're compliant with the law, and then we would ask the board to execute quick claim deeds following that.
Also determine the values of the property, the $450,000 for the county property, $489,470, $489,470.
Pretty much we approve this with confirmation pending. Second. Make sure our legal approves everything.
All right, I have a motion and a second on this item.
I covered your.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Request granted. Number 19 is request approval of a traffic signal software conversion by the Georgia Department of Transportation.
Mr. Hanley's here, but he may want to describe this, but.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, your Department of Transportation has asked the county would be interested in allowing the department to update the traffic signals that are maintained by the county, allowing the department to update the software controllers for the traffic signals. That software is at least, software that's used to controllers now is at least 30 years old. It's a bit cumbersome to use. The department is offering this in addition to the cellular service that will be provided each cabinet location. What they get out of this is traffic data. They will be able to monitor our traffic signals, collect traffic data from those. What it will provide for us is some a little bit newer equipment or software that's easier to use. And then we would also be able to monitor those traffic signals themselves. They've asked us if we would be interested in joining with them in this project. And I would get your permission required for that.
So much money is going to cost taxpayers here in the county. I like that. I got my motion. I make my motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion and a second by way of discussion. So, are you saying that some of the traffic signals would be outfitted with cellular service? Or do you call it major intersections?
Based on my conversation, we have all the intersections. Right now, we own and operate 8 traffic signals, county road intersections. And we pay the utility bills for all of the intersections that are located in unincorporated Coweta County, whether on state route or local. As part of the permit process, we ask for traffic signal at a particular location that will require pay for the associated utility costs. But for these software upgrades, for their ability to be able to monitor the traffic in each intersection, they are to bring the current cell service. I did ask, if there was any time period where the county would have to pick up the cost of that cell service, and they said not at this time, their budget didn't have.
So DOT to do a traffic study from DOT headquarters?
They would be able to gather traffic data.
All right, thank you for that.
That's longer. Thanks. Appreciate it. They're fun. Did you to do this? Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Y'all agree? We agree. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Approved unanimous. Number 20 is a request approval to temporarily close Potts Road for culvert replacement in the 2nd district.
Make a motion this be approved.
Second. Motion and a second on this item. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
And Mr. Coggin,
mentioned earlier tonight. But I don't feel that I can personally make a good decision on anything like that, or even recommend approval or denial without a little bit more information based on what we did before. So that would be one thing, is I would like to see a little more detailed information about those specifics. And secondly, I would like to sit down with some of the staff and go over some of the other information this year, because I do, and I did, and I'm sorry to do all the talking here, but I was fortunate enough to meet with some of the staff members and Mr. Fouts earlier, I guess it was last month, to talk about some of the things to try to enhance, if not maintain, the rural integrity of our county. And I liked some of the ideas that came out. Matter of fact, I appreciate the innovative thoughts that some of our staff members had, and looked at researching what other communities throughout the country, not throughout the state, but throughout the country, have done, where they were able to keep a lot of the rural areas rural. And I say that because the majority of my district is the most rural part of the county, quite honestly. And I heard very loud and clear from the constituents what they desired. But we realize we've got to do what's legal and make sure that those individuals that have an opportunity to do certain things with the land now can either still do that, or we move forward with something to enhance what we're doing. So I'm not ready personally to vote on any of these things, but I do like most of what I'm reading. And if you remember, I was one of the ones, since the majority of the mill villages are in my district as well, I think something to incentivize the development or redevelopment in those areas is special. And I say that anyone that hadn't been through the cotton mills and seen what was done there, and we have other areas like Arnco and Sargent and Grantville and some other areas where they have opportunities, and a couple of those areas have water and sewer as well. So, I'd like to see us do things to incentivize those possible developers to be able to do something similar in other areas throughout the county.
All right, thank you for those comments. What I'm hearing Commissioner Lasser say is that we want to move forward on this process. Can we come back with a slideshow for what the 7 recommendations are?
They're listed on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and I mean, if you guys want to address them one at a time.
Can you put it on the screen?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay, you can?
Yes, sir.
The one I'd like to go ahead and work on there today is the one about the floodplain. I want to get that removed as quick as possible.
I agree with you on that, that needs to be pulled out.
So would we, and I don't disagree, but would we go on and set up a public hearing, advertise it and have public hearings for that? Or do we want to include as many of these that we're in agreement on at this time?
Kind of take a straw poll, maybe one at a time, and just see if there's any more spending on advertising. I mean, if anybody has a...
I agree. I would suggest looking at them one at a time, because there are very specific
very
staff
different.
that kind of work on them.
Large work base to employ our citizens, and one of the first things that I'm told in the business world is they look how business friendly the county appears, and when you put impact fees at the top of your list, turns a bunch of CEOs off. Well, if they don't want growth, then I don't even want to look at Coweta County. So I think short term, yeah, it may produce $8, $10, $12 million on the next 10, 12 years or whatever. But as far as long term, I think we're losing quality business growth in this county if we reinstate impact fees. That's just my opinion. And I think since we've done away with it, the reason we did away with it back in, I think after the recession, is because we were trying to do something to promote the the businesses were hurting, and every time it just costs so much money to even pull a permit to have housing, so.
I concur with you, Commissioner Brooks. I noticed we have in front of us the impact collection fee for 2013. And not to the detriment of staff of the hard work they do, but these numbers are an intake number, and they don't reflect the business that we ran off once we had impact taxes. It's, I think that there is detrimental to the economic vitality of the country, of the county. And we have an opportunity cost. It's what we're not going to have because we have what we have.
You know, I don't argue with you on business, but I think you need them on homes. Why should people that live here all their life have to pay for things that new people are generating? I think they should have to pay for the services that are needed for them.
The construction industry is probably one of the biggest money intake income sources for
But
families.
houses don't really pay for themselves.
Well, I didn't get to finish. All right, so it's one of the biggest commercial sectors, vital sectors to this economy of Coweta. And if we put a burden on those, it's going to have a ripple effect all the way down to families not making payments.
Well, look at Laura Belfort Road. Houses have been built up and down that, and now we don't have the money. Me or you going to have to pay for that road to be expanded?
Well, it comes with growth.
Yeah, that's $50 million it's going to cost us to get the Laura Smith Road.
And if we run off the commercial revenues from impact fees, scaring them off, so that could offset this.
It's going to put a higher burden on the property taxpayers, as we already had a millage rate. If we keep business away from the county, it's going to do nothing but increase. I mean, I can look at my personal. I mean, I bill for the 4th district. My taxes, the millage rate hasn't gone up the past few years, but as far as my personal property tax, I'm getting 20-30% increases on the record, and that's expensive. So if we can offset the personal property tax with business and get along, I think it's a win-win.
I disagree. I think new homes, people should pay for the requirements that they're adding to expenses.
Well, I understand, but I'm not sure about the impact. Is there any way that you can just put impact fee on houses and not anything else?
I don't think so.
It's not possible. So,
but on the other hand, why should the people that lived here all their lives and moved here have to pay for the new people?
How are they paying for the new people?
Well, it's like Lower Fayetteville Road.
I'm saying is
we're fixing to have to expand.
How are the old people having to pay for the new people?
Well, because Lower Fayetteville Road, if you ride up and down it, you'll see the number of tracks. At the meeting we had about a month ago, transportation, they want to widen Lower Fayetteville Road to 4 lanes.
Who's they? Isn't that our road? Is that where the city goes?
Yeah.
Don't we have that control?
No, it's really the city. And
what the city taxpayers are going to be paying now?
97, the Board of Commissioners, Board of Education, and the Sheriff's Office entered into an intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, for the joint submission of a grant to fund the School Resource Officer Program, or SRO. Following receipt of the grant, an SRO was assigned to East Coweta High School, and the local match for this position was split equally 50-50 between the county and the school system. In 1999, the parties entered into a subsequent agreement for the assignment of SROs at various middle and or high schools located within the unincorporated areas of the county, again with compensation of the SROs being split equally 50-50. In 2006, a revised agreement was once again executed by parties to include a few changes to the general terms, including the assignment of motor vehicles and replacement funding for those. And then in 2014, the parties executed a new agreement which expanded the SRO program to include elementary schools, and once again the compensation remained split equally. Earlier this year, the Board of Education did approve the placement of additional SROs throughout the county to ensure that each school is assigned an SRO for the safety and protection of the system and children. As a result of the additional SROs being requested, the staff has met with the sheriff and the school system as well as the county attorney to discuss revisions to the SRO program. Therefore, we have a proposed agreement that outlines the terms, services, responsibilities, and duties performed by SROs assigned to the various schools within the system. As proposed, for the first year, the school system shall reimburse the county for 50% of all personnel costs and 100% of vehicle purchases and necessary equipment as mutually agreed upon. The school system shall reimburse 100% of personnel overtime costs, including payroll taxes, for SROs who work more than the standard 86-hour work week or work period in their capacity as an SRO. For subsequent years, the school system shall reimburse the county for 65% of all personnel costs and continue providing 100% vehicle purchases and necessary equipment. They shall continue to pay 100% of personnel overtime costs. The term of the agreement shall be effective backdated to July 1st, 2018 and continue until June 30th of 2019 unless terminated otherwise as provided in the agreement. The agreement shall automatically renew for one-year terms on each July 1st unless it is terminated by any party. There is a 90-day termination period in the contract. Staff does recommend approval of this, and I know with the sheriff's here, if he and his staff have anything to add, I know they've been an instrumental part of this. And this agreement has been adopted by the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I make a motion to approve. I have a motion and a second on number 16. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Request is approved. On additional action items tonight, I have a request approval to submit a letter associated with the tentative allocation of state funding for airfield marking at the Noonan Coweta County Airport.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the Georgia Department of Transportation has issued a tentative allocation of state funding.
Okay, we have the airport manager.
Yes, sir, and I was going to ask him to go ahead and go through the details of the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. The Coweta County Airport Authority has received a tentative letter of allocation from the Georgia Department of Transportation. It hopefully is a prelude to an actual grant of funds. This is for the airfield marking. Last time we had the markings refreshed, it's been about 8 years ago, and the weather has been unkind, and hot Georgia sun has taken its toll. Almost non-existent. It's actually an item that's been mentioned in our last 2 airfield inspections as something that needs to be addressed. So the state has issued this TA in the amount of $93,750 from the state. The local match would be $31,250. This would be including in the airport's FY19 budget, and which would begin in October 1. The bids would go out probably late September. We also asked that the board include a letter that would go to our GDOT representatives as well as Mr. Lynn Westmoreland, who serves this area on the GDOT board, and asking that $143,100.74 that were incurred with engineering on the East Side Taxiway be included in this grant for reimbursement to the county, since we outlaid the cash for the engineering, that it should be included and reimbursed in this project along with the airfield marking.
Okay.
I make a motion to be approved with the requested.
Second. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Will you finish?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I'd like to add, Mr. Chairman, if I could, number one, I appreciate what you do down there, you and the board. Secondly, I appreciate you bringing up this fact that we've already spent money for that engineering and studies and things that we do, and try to add that to this for reimbursements as well. Thank you.
All right. And I concur with you, Commissioner Master.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next, I have a request approval of execution of a real estate exchange agreement with the Coweta County Water and Sewage Authority.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, in 2004, the Board of Commissioners purchased an approximate 77.25 acre tract on Happy Valley Circle for the development of a future recreation facility. In lieu of developing this property, staff has worked with the Coweta County Water and Sewage Authority regarding property exchange to expand an existing facility. As outlined in the proposed agreement, the county would deed the 77 acres on Happy Valley Road to the authority, and the authority would in turn deed a 67.37 acre tract on Old Corinth Road. There are maps that are attached to depict the property exchange as proposed. The county would receive property to expand the Brownsville Battlefield Park, while the Happy Valley property would provide an enhanced undeveloped buffer for the water supply area around pt Brown Reservoir. Staff is recommending that the board approve the agreement. I will state this would be contingent upon satisfying the legal ad requirements to make sure we're compliant with the law, and then we would ask the board to execute quick claim deeds following that.
Also determine the values of the property, the $450,000 for the county property, $489,470.
Pretty much we approve this with confirmation pending. Second, make sure our legal approves everything.
All right, I have a motion and a second on this item.
I covered you.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Request granted. Number 19 is request approval of a traffic signal software conversion by the Georgia Department of Transportation.
Mr. Hanley's here, but he may want to describe this, but.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, the Department of Transportation has asked the county would be interested in allowing the department to update the traffic signals that are maintained by the county, allowing the department to update the software controllers for those traffic signals. That software is at least, software that's used to controllers now is at least 30 years old. It's a bit cumbersome to use. The department is offering this in addition to cellular service that will be provided at each cabin location. What they get out of this is traffic data. They will be able to monitor our traffic schedules, collect traffic data from those. What it will provide for us is some little bit newer equipment or software that's easier to use. And then we would also be able to monitor those traffic signals ourselves. They've asked us if we would be interested in joining with them in this project. So, and I would get your permission required for that.
So much money is going to cost taxpayers here in the county. I like that. You got my motion. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion and a second by way of discussion. So, are you saying that some of the traffic signals would be outfitted with cellular service? Or did he call it major intersections?
Based on my conversation, we have all the intersections. Right now, we own and operate 8 traffic signals, county road intersections. And we pay the utility bills for all of the intersections that are located on unincorporated Coweta County, whether on state route or local. As part of the permit process, we ask for a traffic signal in a particular location that will require that we pay for the associated utility costs. But for these software upgrades, for their ability to be able to monitor the traffic in each position, they are to bring the current cell service. They did ask if there was any time period where the county would have to pick up the cost of that cell service, and they said not at this time, but they're budgeting that.
So DOT to do a traffic study from DOT headquarters?
They would be able to gather traffic data.
All right, thank you for that.
That's longer. Thanks, appreciate it. They're fun to do this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Y'all agree? We agree. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Approved unanimous. Number 20 is a request approval to temporarily close Potts Road for cover replacement in the 2nd district.
Make a motion to be approved.
Second. Motion and a second on this item. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
And Mr. Coggin mentioned earlier tonight, but I don't feel that I can personally make a good decision on anything like that, or even recommend approval or denial without a little bit more information based on what we did before.
So
So, you know, that would be one thing is I would like to see a little more detailed information about those specifics. And secondly, I would like to sit down with some of the staff and go over some of the other information this year, because I do, and I did, you know, and I'm sorry to do all the talking here, but I was fortunate enough to meet with some of the staff members and Mr. Phelps earlier, I guess it was last month, to talk about some of the things to try to enhance, if not maintain, the rural integrity of our county. And I liked some of the ideas that came out. Matter of fact, I appreciate the innovative thoughts that some of our staff members had, and looked at researching what other communities throughout the country, not throughout the state, but throughout the country have done, where they were able to keep a lot of the rural areas rural. And I say that because the majority of my district is the most rural part of the county, quite honestly. And I heard very loud and clear from the constituents what they desired, but we realized we've got to do what's legal and make sure that those individuals that have an opportunity to do certain things with the land now can either still do that, or we move forward with something to enhance what we're doing. So I'm not ready personally to vote on any of these things, but I do like most of what I'm reading. And if you remember, I was one of the ones, since the majority of the mill villages are in my district as well, I think something to incentivize the development or redevelopment in those areas is special. And I say that anyone that hadn't been through the cotton mills and seen what was done there, and we have other areas like Armco and Sargent and Grantville and some other areas where they have opportunities, and a couple of those areas have water and sewer as well. So, you know, I'd like to see us do things to incentivize those possible developers to be able to do something similar in other areas throughout the county.
Thank you for those comments. What I'm hearing Commissioner Lassen say is that we want to move forward on this process. Can we come back with a slideshow for what the 7 recommendations are?
They're listed on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and I mean, if you guys want to address them one at a time.
Can you put it on the screen?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay, you can?
Yes, sir.
The one I'd like to go ahead and work on today is the one about the floodplain. I want to get that removed as quick as possible.
I agree with you on that, That needs to be pulled out.
So would we, and I don't disagree, but would we go on and set up a public hearing, advertise it and have public hearings for that? Or do we want to include as many of these that we're in agreement on at this time?
Got to take a straw poll, maybe one at a time, and just see if there's any more flipping on advertising. I mean, if anybody has a...
I agree. I would suggest looking at them one at a time, because there are very specific
very
staff
different.
that kind of work on them.
Large work base to employ our citizens, and one of the first things that I'm told in the business world is they look how business friendly the county appears, and when you put impact fees at the top of your list, turns a bunch of CEOs off. Well, if they don't want growth, then I don't even want to look at Coweta County. So I think short term, yeah, it may produce $8, $10, $12 million on the next 10, 12 years or whatever. But as far as long term, I think we're losing quality business growth in this county if we reinstate impact fees. That's just my opinion. And I think since we've done away with it, the reason we did away with it back in, I think after the recession, is because we were trying to do something to promote the businesses were hurting, and every time it just costs so much money to even pull a permit to have housing. So
I concur with you, Commissioner Brooks. I noticed we have in front of us the impact collection fee for 2013. And not to the detriment of staff of the hard work they do, but these numbers are an intake number, and they don't reflect the business that we ran off once we had impact taxes. It's, I think that there is detrimental to the economic vitality of the country, of the county. We have an opportunity cost. It's what we're not going to have because we have what we have.
You know, I don't argue with you on business, but I think you need them on homes. Why should people that live here all their life have to pay for things that new people are generating? I think they should have to pay for the services that are needed for them.
The construction industry is probably one of the biggest money intake income sources for
But
families.
houses don't really pay for themselves.
Well, I didn't get to finish. All right, so it's one of the biggest commercial sectors, and vital sectors to this economy of Coweta. And if we put a burden on those, it's going to have a ripple effect all the way down to families not making payments.
Well, look at Lower Fayetteville Road. Houses have been built up and down that, and now we don't have the money. Me or you going to have to pay for that road to be expanded?
Well, it comes with growth.
Yeah, but that's $50 million it's going to cost us to get the Laura Smith Road.
And if we run off the commercial revenues from impact fees, scaring them off, so that could offset this.
It's going to put a higher burden on the property taxpayers, as we already had a millage rate. If we keep business away from the county, it's going to do nothing but increase. I mean, I can look at my personal. I mean, I bill for the 4th district. My taxes, yeah, the millage rate hasn't gone up the past few years, but as far as my personal property tax, yeah, I'm getting 20-30% increases on the record, and that's expensive. So if we can offset the personal property tax with business and get along, I think it's a win-win.
I disagree. I think new homes, people should pay for the requirements that they're into expenses.
Well, I understand, but I'm not sure about the impact. Is there any way that you can just put impact fee on houses and not anything else?
I don't think so.
It's not possible. So.
But on the other hand, why should the people that have lived here all their lives and moved here have to pay for the new people?
How are they paying for the new people?
Well, it's like Lower Fayetteville Road.
I'm saying is
we're fixing to have to expand.
How are the old people having to pay for the new people?
Well, because Lower Fayetteville Road, if you ride up and down it, you'll see the number of tracks. At the meeting we had about a month ago, transportation, they want to widen Lower Fayetteville Road to 4 lanes.
Who's they? Isn't that our road? Is that where the city goes?
Yeah.
Don't we have that control?
No, it's really the city. And
the city taxpayers are going to be paying that.
No.